He's the toughest nails entrepreneur, best known as Mr. Wonderful on the hit reality television show Shark Tank. But now Canadian businessman Kevin O'Leary is getting some backlash for these comments he made about a report that found the richest 1% in the world control $1.10 trillion in wealth. Watch.
This is a great thing because it inspires everybody, gets the motivation to look up to the 1% and say, I want to become one of those people. I'm going to fight hard to get up to the top. This is fantastic news, and of course I applaud it. What can be wrong with
Okay, so look at the screen grab here. Oxfam, the wealth of the richest 1% totals $110 trillion. All right, I'm going to get out the calculator, and we'll take this apart, and let's look at what these numbers turn out to be. Okay, in the video we just saw, they explained how the richest 1% in the world control $110 trillion of wealth. Now, that's an enormous number, but it's kind of meaningless until we figure out how many people are in the world, what makes up 1% of them, and what does that work out to. So using this calculator, it's really not that hard to figure out. We'll take the population of the world being 7 billion people. Alright, so let's do 7 billion. Okay, so 1% of 7 billion is 70 million. Following so far? So let's go back to that number from before. $110 trillion. That's $110 trillion. That's 110,000. It's 110 million. 110 billion. It's $110 trillion. It's a massive number. But what happens is when you divide it by 70 million people, which is what you'd call the top 1%, what do you think the number's going to be? 10 million per person? 20? 50? 100 million per person? These super, super elite, super wealthy people? Not exactly. It's $1.57 million. So, we'll stick to 1.6 million. We'll round up. So, to be in the 1%, you have to have $1.6 million. And that's not your annual income. That's $1.6 million of your total net worth. Meaning everything in your bank account, your house, etc., your stock holdings, etc. So this whole notion that, you know, this 1% controlling the world's wealth is, you know, causing everyone to be poor, you only need $1.6 million and you're in the worldwide 1%. Speaking of the language of the left, the way they use control, that's a weasel word. It's a buzzword to make it sound more nefarious. In other words, if I came up to you and you said, so how are you doing financially? If I said, well, I control $3,200 in my checking account, you'd think I was an idiot. Because who talks like that? So for someone to say, that rich guy, he's earned $1.9 million, or he has $1.9 million in assets, or he's worth $1.9 million, that doesn't sound as nasty as saying he controls $1.9 million. So that's the language of the left. If you can listen to the things they say and hear the words they use, and I think a lot of them don't even know they're using these words. I don't think they realize that what they're saying is Marxist language that's designed to make people jealous of those who are doing better than them. Okay, so earlier I said that to be in the mythical 1%, you need to have a net worth of $1.6 million. Let's watch some Hollywood liberals who are very much into wealth redistribution and very much into fighting the so-called 1%.
Is a huge disparity between rich and poor, where 300 Americans have the same amount of wealth as the 85 million poorest Americans. I think a socialist egalitarian system based on the massive redistribution of wealth, heavy taxation of corporations, and massive responsibility for energy companies and any company that's exploiting the environment, I think they should be I think the very concept of profit should be hugely reduced. David Cameron says profit isn't a dirty word. I say profit is a filthy word, because wherever
You just heard him say we need a massive redistribution of wealth. We need higher taxes on the wealthy. We need massive, massive taxes on corporations. Well, let's see where he stacks up, shall we? This is actually pretty easy. I don't even need the calculator, but just for fun, we'll do it. So, Russell Brand, $15 million net worth. Divided by $1.6 million. You guys can do this without a calculator, but 9.3. So 9.3 members of the 1% would have to pool all their wealth and hand it in to equal just what Russell Brand is worth. Oh, and by the way, he just bought a $2 million house, $2.2 million LA country house. So his house is worth more than the entire net worth of 1.5 members of the 1%. Don't you just love these Hollywood assholes?
Occupy's motto is, the only solution is world revolution. Okay. What about setting our sights a little lower, like taking back Wisconsin? Now, last fall, I must admit that I too got caught up in the Occupy Wall Street excitement. I went down there, I chanted, I held a sign, I shared some sacred herb with members of a drumming circle. But strangely enough, it turns out that having a sleepover in the park for 4 months didn't cause Wall Street to crumble. And that's not because Occupy didn't have the right message. It did. That America's wealth is increasingly in the hands of a tiny kleptocratic priesthood of finance cowboys and the politicians they buy.
Bill Maher has a net worth of $23 million. There's Bill Maher's net worth, $23 million. So let's divide that by 1.6 million, which is the entry point to being the 1%. And so Bill Maher by himself accounts for 14 members of the richest 1%. By himself, he counts for 14 of their entire net worths. You combine 14 of their net worths and you get Bill Maher. All right, let's keep going.
The crimes that were committed by Wall Street are just that, crimes. And if Barack Obama doesn't have the courage to shut down Guantanamo Bay, then perhaps he can fill some of those animal cages with the Wall Street criminals who torpedoed our economy. And if Barack Obama doesn't have the courage to do that, we may have to drag those sons of bitches off to jail ourselves.
Tom Morello, idiot guitar player from Rage Against the Machine, well, his net worth is $60 million. So, what is 60 million? Divided by 1.6 million. 37.5. It would take 37.5 members of the top 1% to have what Tom Morello has. What a greedy bastard. We need to tax him more, don't we?
We're impartial on this show. This is from at Gateway Patriot, a question for Michael Moore. You've benefited personally greatly from capitalism, yet you're one of its biggest critics. How do you square that?
Isn't that amazing? I mean, really, I'm here talking against my own interests.
Yeah, what's the matter with you? What's wrong with me? You crazy man. It's a good point. You're in the 1%, right?
I'm not in the 1%, no, but I am. Yes,
Tommy, right?
I'm not in the 1%, no, but right? I'm not in the 1%, no, but I am. Yes,
Tommy.
Okay, we just saw that Michael Moore said he's not a member of the 1%. Well, let's look into that. Michael Moore's net worth is $50 million. So, let us take $50 million, divide it by the $1.6 billion you need to be in the 1%, and, 31 members. 31 members of the 1% is what it would take to pool their wealth together to have what Michael Moore has. Let's keep going, shall we?
So hard. The Occupy movement is under attack. And while we're under attack, the education process is still continues, but...
Okay, this may be my favorite. Russell Simmons of Def Jam. He has a net worth of $330 million. $330 million. By the way, I don't begrudge any of these guys earning their money, but they do think that the 1% has too much money, and it's because of the 1% that there's so many poor people in the world, and people in America just can't seem to get a break. So, let's look at his wealth. So he has $330 million. So, let's divide that by $1.6 million. And, yeah, you need 206 members of the 1% to equal what Russell Simmons has. And yet, he's down at Occupy Wall Street telling people that the rich have too much and the 1% has too much power. He's 206 members of the 1% by himself. What a schmuck.